I'm Ryan Boyd of Wakefield Community Access Television, and I'm joined today by Pastor Doug Dry of the First Baptist Church here in Wakefield. And what we're going to discuss here is his vision on men helping each other with the different basic issues that we all go through in life. So, Doug, welcome, and please
Thank you.
tell me more about what you're thinking
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Well, we're kind of laying out some vision for side by side ministry, and the byline is no one walks alone. And so, my commitment, my desire is to encourage, be a catalyst in other men's lives, to help them connect with other men, to kind of encourage, to spur each other on, to be, better husbands, better parents, better friends, better members of the community, to connect with God and to, be able to live with a sense of freedom and joy and not just the sort of going through the motions and the drudgery of life. Did you ever see the movie? This is a terrible movie, but Joe versus the Volcano.
I've heard of it. I've not seen it.
I think it's Tom Hanks. It might even be Tom Hanks and might even be Meg Ryan. Not 100% sure on that, but it's terrible. But it's terrible. It just seems like it's just a lame movie.
Yeah.
But I just remember that sort of the beginning part of it. It kind of shows like people that are almost like automatons that just sort of walking through life, and I wonder how many of us just sort of day by day, the grind, boom, boom. And maybe we live for the weekend, which, this weekend's going to be rainy. So that's lame. Now you're still, or you live for that 2-week summer vacation and then it comes and goes and you're like, oh, that was way too short.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we were made to live that way. And I think when we get to the end of our life, we don't want to be like, man, I just kind of went through life and went through the motions. And there must have been, did I miss anything? And I think sometimes men, we do.
I think it's an excellent thing to consider and think about. Anyone who hears this or is listening, I think at any moment we can take 5 minutes and depending, whatever age you are, think back the last 10 years. What are the best memories from that time? Or is it, do you feel that like you just kind of woke up and it's 10 years later?
Yeah.
What happened?
Right.
I do think, we don't take the time to slow down every now and then, reevaluate a little bit. It's so easy to get caught up in the everyday life that we all have to do. We have to make a living in some way. We have to pay the bills. I got to go to bed early because I got an early day tomorrow. And where do you find that time for fun, for activity, and for, more importantly, connection?
Yeah.
The connection with those people in your lives and that can help you dig a little bit deeper, which it sounds like what you're looking to do here. A lot of our lives are surface, right? We just, how's it going? I'm great. How are you doing?
Right.
Okay, good.
Right.
But like, let's dig a little deeper. No. Is there something you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Is there anything that can make you feel better after? Because I'll tell you, sometimes for me, I'm a talker, right? So I will talk about my problems left, right, and center, probably to the point where people don't want to hear them anymore. But it's my way of processing. That's how I process what's going on with me. I run it by other people and go, hey, look, this is what I'm going through right now. Have you ever experienced this, or has this ever happened to you? And whether the answer is yes or no, it helps me just sort of go, okay, all right. Well, it gets it out. It no longer is a burden on me.
Right.
And I'm able to kind of help process it better, move on from it, and continue on with the joys of life instead of having something bog me down.
Right. I like to process actually through like journaling is a big part.
Great one too.
And then just walking. However, it's most effective when I can take maybe some of those thoughts and then I can sit down with some other guys and say, these are some things I was thinking about. Do you guys ever have these thoughts or what? Or maybe I'm struggling with this. I can't get beyond this.
Yeah.
Or, wow, I blew it again with my kids.
Yeah.
I've said I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that, and wham, there it is.
Yeah.
Anybody got anything for me? And also to be able to say, all right, let's sort of bring in someone else. It could be literally bring in somebody else, but it could be a book. It could be some kind of resource where somebody else has some insight on addressing those kind of issues.
Yeah, I think people often falsely think that they're alone in the world on some of these things.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Right.
I mean, we all, yeah. If you have kids, good chance you've yelled at them before, and then afterward went, "Oh man, I can do better than that." You
Right,
know, or
right.
you get upset about something, or
Yeah.
you let something else upset you, when you realize, you know what, it really wasn't about me at all. And,
Right.
But I think that we are almost afraid sometimes to talk about it. You know, and I'm not exactly sure why, but I know for me, I've been in situations with a group of people, and I go, man, I really want to talk about this, but I don't know how it's going to come across. I
Right,
don't
right.
know if people are going to relate to this or not. I don't want to look like I'm out of place here or weird in some way, you know.
Right.
But I think that again, it's false. I think everyone goes through something, and
Yeah.
everyone has these thoughts and emotions, and to not be afraid to talk about it with a group of people, you know,
Right.
especially if there's other guys around. And I can talk to my wife about anything, you know, but I can count probably on one hand the amount of times I've talked to my best friend growing up about things that are going on in my life that have really struggled with me. And but when we have those conversations, and I hear from him, and he talks to me about, oh my God, this same exact thing is happening to me. Like, we both have young kids.
Right.
We caught up pretty recently about the struggles we're going through. You
Yeah.
know, there's no time for anything. We haven't seen each other in a couple of years, and work is tough, and the hours are long, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do about it.
Right,
You know,
right.
And when you have that connection and you feel it,
Yeah.
I think there's something that inside that makes you feel more at peace, because you go, oh my God, it's not just me.
Yeah,
Someone
that's
else is
right.
out there and understands it too. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
And I think that having a group like this that you're discussing, and giving folks that opportunity to just again unburden yourself, I guess, for lack of
Yeah.
a better word,
Yeah.
can go a long way into improving someone's life.
Yeah, and a safe space too, where you're not competing. I mean, I think, of course, I mean, I actually acknowledged to my family this summer on vacation. My son and my oldest son is like 35, and he had said, I always feel like, everything you do is like a competition, and there's a good sense of competition. I love competition, but if I'm, when I'm sitting down with another person and just say, oh, I wonder how I'm coming across. I'm competing with them as far as maybe my career or my family, or or how do I look, or which I don't worry about nearly so much anymore. But that's always there. There's always a little bit of
There's always
vanity,
something.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
There's always something. And so, but with other guys, you say, well, I know these guys they're for me. I'm not competing against them. We're all, in a sense, we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
And we're trying to move forward, in life. And years ago, I was challenged to adopt a personal mission statement. And this came out of a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People,
Sure,
back in that was probably like the 80s. Stephen Covey. And the first habit was begin with the end in mind. And what would you like written on your tombstone? And then say, well, how do you live into that? So the personal mission statement that I adopted initially was to walk with God and bring others along. So that whole sense of this relation with God is personal, but it's not meant to be individual.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be that you just do it by yourself. It's no, we do this together. There's a corporate entity. And I love walking, and so hence side by side, walking, journeying, traveling, all those images work. Hiking, that all works with me. And then years later, I had to add another component that said, living a life of love that begins at home.
Oh, that's nice.
And it's easy to think of, especially as a pastor, you serve other people, and then your own home, what do they get?
Yeah.
They get the little dregs, and the classic examples of PKs or pastor kids who are like wild, crazy kids because their parents never invested in them, or the cobbler's kids don't have shoes,
right.
or I'm sure
Yeah.
the broadcaster they don't get to watch TV. Oh wait, that's a good thing.
No, but honestly, I think like it starts at home, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's absolutely right, and I think if you're ignoring that part of your life, or if you're whether purposely or unconsciously, most likely unconsciously, I think it can have a major effect on people in your immediate family and in your home. You know? And it's again, for me, it's about taking a step back. We getting caught up in the rush of everything. What are we missing?
Yeah, that's right.
Because I think if you're not sleeping well, if you're not don't have a clear conscience, if you're not finding joy in what it is you're doing,
Right.
then something's not right there. Something's not being fulfilled.
That's right.
There.
That's right.
And so how do you find it? Or,
Right.
or who do you talk to about that? And what can a person do to take a step forward towards the place that they want to be
That's
at?
right. So let me give you some specifics here to outline what does a side-by-side group look like, or what could it look like, because they all can take different forms. And this kind of is really coming out of my own experience of groups that I've led, groups that I've participated in. But generally, it's a time when a group of maybe 3, 4, 5 guys get together. It's great if you can have a little bit of coffee or food or some aspect of that is always very helpful. In a place that's easy to get to, but yet there's some level of privacy. And again, local diners or coffee shops can work if you have a little place to kind of hunker down in the corner.
Absolutely.
And then it's usually something that meets weekly. So there's a commitment. So there is a commitment to say, I'm committed to you guys. And doesn't mean you never miss, something comes up, but generally speaking, it's a priority. You've scheduled it in. And so a lot of times I've done them early morning. And it's funny because I was talking to someone in our town about, did he think like 6 a.m. would be a good time, or 6:30, and he's like, well, it's interesting because people, if they don't have to commute anymore, they actually go into work later. And so you don't have to start so early. Because I've had groups where people are commuting into, different places and they've had like an hour commute. So we got to start really early.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't have to start so early. That's not a bad thing. But whatever, you do it in a time where generally it's not taking away even from family time or your work. So
absolutely.
Could be early morning, could be a Saturday morning, which for some guys that works, but other times that's the worst time.
Right.
That you want to destroy a marriage? Pull the guy away. Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Okay, honey, I'm
Sorry,
going up.
can't make it to the kids' games. Gotta go do this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Could be in the evening. I've done them, evening, 7 o'clock, kind of a thing like that. But meeting for an hour and then having some kind of something to put some content in order to discuss. And I just recently read a book by David Brooks called The Second Mountain. And for those of you that aren't familiar with David Brooks, he's a New York Times columnist, award-winning writer. He's on PBS NewsHour. He's one of the political commentators, been on that forever. But he's written a lot of books that sort of look at society and very insightful, I think. But this book kind of is more of his own experience where he was at the kind of the top of his game. I mean, in terms of employment, he's the top of his game there. He's, I think, probably very affluent, blah blah blah, and then his life fell apart, and he realized that he had been trained, and the first mountain is kind of college, education, career, family. At least you get all those things.
Yeah.
But what happens if you get to that and realize that's not really fulfilling? You're toast inside,
Right.
Or something happens. In his case, actually, his marriage fell apart, and now suddenly he's alone and single. And I think his kids were probably grown at that point, or growing. And so this other book kind of comes out of that in terms of what are things that as people, it isn't just a men's group, but it was very challenging to me. And he identifies 4 commitments that are essential on this. He calls this second mountain. This mountain where life is more of joy. You mentioned the joy word there, as opposed to just achievement and accomplishment. And it doesn't have to be someone who's midlife or beyond. It can be, hey, if you know these things early on, you can save yourself a lot of grief.
Right.
And so he talks about like a commitment to a vocation as opposed to just a career, like a calling. What is a calling in life? To a marriage and family. He uses philosophy or to faith. So I oriented more towards faith, but there's a commitment to something that's, again, bigger than ourselves. And then service, and really talks well about how in our culture since the 60s, when individualism really took off, you're free to express yourself, sounded great, but it just resulted in people being so isolated. I'm just free to be myself, and I am just myself.
Yeah.
And I've lost. Then there's no fabric of relationship, and so that's a book that I would love to process with some other men.
Yeah.
maybe guys that want to read the whole book, it's like, it's a little daunting to get through it, but even just pull some excerpts out and to say, here's what he says about this. What do you guys think about that? And I think the way he writes, it can apply to people whether they have faith, whether they don't have faith, whether they, are old, young, rich, poor. It kind of applies across the board.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people, we talk about challenges, right? And whether it's a physical challenge or an emotional challenge, I think people are afraid sometimes to take on more of that emotional challenge. So it sounds like this book, like you said, it challenged you. It brings up thoughts and ideas that maybe you weren't considering, or are out there, but I don't really want to talk about that. Right.
Yeah.
But I think when you kind of force yourself out of your comfort zone, and that can be true of anywhere, but get out of your comfort zone, it forces you to explore a new area, and it forces you to answer some questions that either maybe you hadn't thought of or you've been putting off.
That's right. That's right.
And so I think a group like this that's going to have topics that might end up challenging you as an individual and as a person, it can help you grow. It can help you better understand who you are or why you feel a certain way or something that you're going through, and you can help resolve it. Yeah. So I think it's a really interesting book, first off, but then also to be able to talk about it and take some of the lessons from it and bring it into these discussions would be great. Right.
And then, so I'm kind of looking at maybe starting two groups. So that would be one group that kind of, you would have an appeal where, again, if you don't have even let's say a faith or a biblical background, you could easily engage in that. And then another group looking at one specific aspect of the New Testament of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, which is probably the most famous sermon that's been recorded. And as one writer was saying, it's one that's most familiar but least practiced.
Sure.
That it has some really challenging things about what are the things that really are most important, and what is it like to live under God's rule and reign.
Yeah.
And in that, it's things like crazy statements like, well, blessed are the poor in spirit. Like, what? You would think those are like the cursed ones, or blessed are those who mourn. Well, why are they blessed? What is that all about? And he talks about things like, you said, don't murder. Okay, most of us probably are good at that. Yeah. But he says, well, what about if you're in your heart where you're angry at your brother? What if you murder him in your heart? And how many of us haven't murdered people while we're in the shower, right?
Someone cuts you off in traffic and you're like, oh, that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or he says, what about adultery and then lust? Again, an issue of guys. Well, probably not just guys, but I think predominantly guys.
Sure.
We're so visually oriented. And so the destructiveness of things that are under the surface that are not external, we could think, oh, I'm doing great. And yet, what's my heart like?
Yeah.
And at the end of that sermon, Jesus gives two examples. He gives a house that's built on sand and a house that's built on rock. And both of these houses encounter storms, but the one on sand, of course, washes away, and the one on the rock stands. And he says the difference is the one who hears my words and puts them into practice.
Sure.
And so that second group is trying to look at this sermon and say, wow, there's some radical stuff here. Love your enemies. Ooh, what does that look like? Turn the other cheek. Exactly. Is that realistic? If it is, how and where could I put that in practice? And I need your help to hold me accountable, because this is not something I would naturally do.
Yeah.
So that would be geared towards people who maybe even have a faith background, who want to go deeper, who maybe have some familiarity with the Bible, or they want to get more. They've heard about Jesus. They don't even know, have they ever really read anything that Jesus said? So this is one section from Matthew's Gospel that has one recorded message there. So that would be the foundation for the group. And, in any of these groups, this is sort of a starting point. Depending on who kind of comes out of the woodwork, who connects with this, there may be, that's great. We want to just talk about this one aspect. And it may take, 4 weeks. We're going to talk about that. And because we have a lot to say on it. Or we're going to zip through this quicker because it doesn't really, at this point, doesn't seem to apply to us.
Yeah, I think that makes sense with what you're saying within these groups as well, because it can evolve. You're there you're there to listen. Right. So if the group is saying, we want to go in this direction. We want to talk about this topic. We want to
Yeah.
talk about this part of this topic. I think that makes a lot of sense, being able to just kind of go with the flow and,
Right.
and see where it takes you,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah.
I remember once I was listening to a sermon in church about storms, right? And I remember the pastor had said, everyone in this room, everyone in your life, there is a storm, right? And it's a question of, are you in it right now? Did it just pass you, or is one approaching?
Right.
You know, and
Yeah.
it was really thought provoking to sort of say, like, okay, like if you knew you were going through something, you know, then like you're in your storm right now. Or if you think, oh, life is amazing, no one can touch me. Well, guess what? There's a storm coming at some point,
That's
you know.
right.
And
That's right.
is what do you do as a man, as a person, as a family, as a group, to deal with that storm,
Yeah.
you know, and or how did you deal with it when it was here? And I think being able to connect with others about it, because you get a group of people together, right? You're going to have some of them that are in that storm right now, some that can give lessons from the storm that they were in.
That's right.
Or some that say, oh my gosh, I know this is coming my way. What should I do when it happens? And I think being able to have that with a group of people, it would be such a powerful tool
Yeah.
for them to be able to put in their tool belt.
That's right. And, you know, I was in here last year with our intern, Seth.
Yeah,
Brian,
he
you
was
were
great.
helping us with that. And, you know, I could be Seth's dad. But I learned a lot from Seth because of, you know, as you get older, sometimes you either become less idealistic and you think, oh, I guess I really can't do that anymore. Or I've never thought to ask those questions. And another generation that says, well, we're looking at it this way.
Yeah,
I'm
they
like,
just
wow.
think
Okay.
differently.
And yet I think hopefully Seth would say that it was helpful for him to be in conversation with someone who's walked further down the road, as now has come back and say, well, let's do this part again. I've been on that trail before.
Absolutely.
And I know where that sinkhole is there, and let's avoid that. And there's a really cool waterfall over here,
Yeah.
and it's great for dive. There's a little cliff we can dive off in, you know. And so I'm hoping to be a catalyst here in our community. And
Absolutely.
if this resonates with you, if this resonates with you and you're interested in talking more about that, you can connect with me at my email. It's probably the easiest way, is dougd24@outlook.com. Just drop me a note and say, hey, I'd like to talk a little bit more about side-by-side groups and maybe participate in one. And again, sort of the when it's going to be, one of these would be, it's really determined by the responsiveness of the men that I've personally invited, or that will respond to, you know, this podcast or through other kind of means of communication, getting the word out.
Absolutely. And then just closing for me, all I can say is this sort of work is important it on an individual level, but also on kind of a greater society level. To be able to open yourself up, you know, be vulnerable with a group of people and know that you have a safe space that you can do that. I mean, it's only going to lead to better things that are going to help you grow as an individual and become more fulfilled in your own life. So
That's
I
right.
think it's a wonderful opportunity that folks should take advantage
Good.
of.
I'm going to sign you up.
Perfect.
So Ryan,
Let me know.
right
I'll show
here.
up to one.
We
I'm
got him
happy.
there.
I'm happy to do it.
If we have food, right?
Yeah, well, it has to be food or football. One of the two.
Food or
One of the
football.
two.
Okay, that'll work. Or,
No, I
you
think
know,
it
or both
sounds-
together.
Well, yeah,
That's
Thursday
sweet.
night, so we'll do it.
There we
But
go.
I think it's a wonderful thing you're putting together.
That's a good idea. I like that. Maybe that'll be
You
the
could
first
do
group.
it. Thursday night football and
group.
just
All
talk
right.
about some topics during the commercial
maybe
breaks.
a commercial break or halftime.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen to the Manning brothers, so that's on Monday, I guess, right?
yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you, Ryan,
This
again.
has been wonderful.
It's been awesome. So,
right.
very
See you
good.
soon.
See you soon.